Since the start of 2026, we've been stuck in a rut. Feels like it hasn't stopped raining. And you're right, some parts of the West Country had their wettest January on record. Nearly 40 weather warnings, scores of flood alerts and 3 named storms all left a trail of destruction, changing landscapes and damaging landmarks.
Me and the kids were seconds away really from being impaled by the trees.
Came in record time. I've never seen the water come in so fast, 8 days, and we were back to almost where we were in 2014.
Depressing, because you wake up every morning and you think, oh gosh, here we go again. It's demoralising as well, but you know you can't control the weather.
I'll be finding out whether wetter winters and frequent flooding are here to stay. But first, Cathy Wardle looks back at the community's hardest hit and those left clearing up.
Friday, the 9th of January 2026, Cornwall wakes to mass devastation. Overnight, Storm Goretti had torn through the duchy in what's been described as a multi-hazard event, uprooting thousands of trees as though they were mere weeds, taking out power lines and damaging homes and businesses.
There was a one almighty crash. I ventured out to see what had happened, and part of the roof was actually crashed my vehicle.
The day before, as the region prepared for the onslaught, a rare Met Office red warning of wind had been issued, meaning danger to life. Falmouth Coast Guard issued a rare hurricane alert to all shipping.
Increasing hurricane force 12 soon.
On the Isles of Scilly, the first landfall to be touched by the ferocious storm, around 400 trees on the scenic island of Tresco were razed to the ground.
You knew there'd been something cataclysmic had taken place, but then over the day, as I visited more and more areas of the island and more reports came in, you realise the scale of it.
In Cornwall, news soon broke of the human cost. James Southey was killed when a tree fell on his caravan at Morgan near Helston. Across Cornwall, several other homes were crushed by trees. In Falmouth, a mum and her 2 young children narrowly escaped when a tree crashed through the roof of their home.
The glass started smashing, the front door just blew wide open. You're hearing winds. There's paper, cardboard, wood flying around. Really hazardous. And then this giant tree literally just came through, and me and the kids were seconds away really from being impaled by the trees.
The debris blocked roads, with many villages cut off until teams of volunteers had chainsawed their way through. Tens of thousands were left without power, in some cases without water for days afterwards around Helston, the Lizard and Penzance. People in the village of Grampound near Truro were evacuated due to a suspected gas leak caused by fallen trees. Around 80% of the trees on the historic St Michael's Mount were also lost to the storm.
We expect to lose a few trees, but not as many as we see here now. I mean, it is devastating to us as gardeners. You spend all that time trying to recreate a garden and design it over the years.
Elsewhere, infrastructure was affected, like the road to Mainporth Beach, forcing months of closure and a lengthy diversion. And the roof torn from the grandstand of the Cornish Pirates' Penzance rugby ground. Weeks on, for many, the clear-up after one of the worst storms seen here in decades continues, whilst facing the last thing an already battered region needs: 2 further storms. Enter Storm Ingrid. On the 24th of January, heavy rain and powerful waves hit communities along the south coast. In Teignmouth, part of the 157-year-old Victorian pier was washed away, with one of its beams ending up at nearby Dawlish. There, rail services faced disruption due to the dangerous seas, which tore a hole into a wall lining the railway track. Huge boulders were strewn across the seafront, and in Tor Cross, waves crashed over cottages, tearing off shutters and flooding homes.
The shingle in subsequent waves smashed some of the windows, and also some water came down the chimneys, so the wave height was that high that it might go over the top of the building and down.
More than 17 tonnes of debris had to be cleared in the Torbay area. In Cornwall, famous Castle Beach Cafe suffered extensive damage from the rough seas. And in Porthpeen near St Austell, the slipway onto the beach was wrecked by waves crashing several metres above the seawall. Just a few days later, giving the region no time to dust itself off, on the 26th of January, Storm Chandra hit, bringing heavy rain and strong winds and causing widespread flooding as already saturated ground struggled to cope with further rainfall.
We had pumps, we were sweeping things out, and at one point I was like, look, there's just nothing we can do at this point because it's metric tons of water coming in and you're there with just a broom and a pump, and you feel like you're not able to do much against it, really. It's the power of nature.
Across Devon, roads became impassable, with fire crews having to rescue people from at least 25 vehicles. Homes too were flooded in Axminster and Ottery St Mary, with the River Otter reaching its highest recorded level. In Somerset, a major incident was declared in the wake of the storm as the heavy rain led to extensive flooding on the levels.
2014, as you know, was a long, slow flood, took 2 months. This has taken 5 days, just under a week to get to the point that we're at now.
Pumps at Northmoor were pumping out vast quantities of excess water into the River Parrett to try and keep nature at bay. But as January drew to a close, the fallout from successive storms wouldn't let up, as part of the A379 coast road near Tor Cross, known as the Slapton Line, collapsed. Residents here woke up to find a section of the road had washed away, impacting livelihoods and transport links.
This is just devastating for the whole area. You know, just people commuting to Dartmouth backwards and forwards. I go there for my sport. The pub, the people living here, it's just so sad for the area.
Repairs could cost tens of millions. This just one of the communities contemplating a future that may bring increasingly extreme weather.
Southern parts of Dartmoor saw an awful lot of rain during the year so far. White Barrow, just up the hill, had nearly 550 millimetres of rain, which is more than 80% more than their average, making it the wettest part of the region, and it stayed wet through February too. And people are wondering just how much more they can take. But what about those who rely on the land for their living? Well, Louisa Britton has been hearing about the impact on farmers who've seen their crops rotting in the floodwater.
These fields in West Yeo near Bridgewater started to flood almost a month ago, but they're still underwater and will be for many weeks to come. Below the surface, crops have rotted, wildlife drowned, and flower meadows destroyed. And it's the farm left counting the cost.
It came in record time. I've never seen the water come in so fast, 8 days, and we were back to almost where we were in 2014.
This is a herbal ley, and a lot of the herbs are rotting. You can see they're all dying here. The roots are in such soggy, wet mud that they'll rot.
It's nothing we can't get over, but it's an extra cost to the business.
How much do you reckon it will cost?
Oh, tens of thousands. There isn't any insurance for that, and we don't get compensated for having the water. We've got to bear in mind where we are on my farm. We are higher than a lot of Bridgewater. All this water has got to be manually pumped out.
Until that water recedes further, access to the farm remains difficult, with tractors needed to drive through floodwater and collect supplies. And with more regular flooding, there are calls for permanent pumps to be put in place.
We've flooded to a point, fortunately, a lot of the houses in the village didn't flood this time. But that was only because of the rain stopped and they managed to get the pumps in literally in the nick of time. It didn't need to be like that. If we had permanent pumps, we could have pumped straight away and a lot of this wouldn't have happened.
James's family has been farming cattle here for 3 generations, and the farm is self-sufficient, growing the grass and corn needed to feed the animals. but increasingly unpredictable weather is making this way of life more difficult.
2014 flood was a 1 in 100 year flood. Then we had a 2022 flood, then we had a flood now, 2026. So we need to sort of be ahead of the game. We're always behind the curve, so we need to try and get this infrastructure up together. Because the next flood, we might not get away with it. We cannot make ourselves resilient without the Environment Agency and government investing in the area.
The Environment Agency says it's committed to reviewing its response to flooding in Somerset, including the possibility of permanent pumps in certain locations, while the government says it's investing billions in flood defences across the country. But for those like James, still surrounded by water, change is proving too slow.
The impact of our wet winter on livelihoods, therefore, is clear. The relentless rain has disrupted everyday lives. It's made making plans on weekends really hard. While parents have been stood on the sidelines of sports pitches absolutely soaked through, it's been hard for those desperately trying to keep clubs going, as Ross Arnott has been finding out.
However you look at it, the impact of the weather is clear to see. Taunton Town are barely halfway through their season and their pitch tells its own story. The wettest January on record, taking its toll. A number of games cancelled already this year, and for those at the club, it's an unprecedented situation.
Have you ever seen a time like this where a pitch is just being battered by the weather so much?
Not as bad as since the beginning of the year. I think we've had over 350 mil of rain, and that's a lot of rain for a club at this level. You're not going to have the world's greatest drainage systems. It's depressing because you wake up every morning and you think, oh gosh, here we go again, but it's demoralising as well. But you know you can't control the weather. Other grounds, they're all struggling. You don't know at the moment with the weather it is, you don't know when the next game's going to happen. Fingers crossed we're going to be all right for Saturday.
You've been in football a long time, Gary. This sort of weather, have you ever seen anything quite like it?
Not really. You don't normally get quite a few games on the trot cancelled.
You may end up playing up to a dozen or so games a month, which for players at this level is a bit of a concern as well.
It is a concern for player welfare. At part-time levels, it's tough for everybody, but we do it because we all love it.
As well as the obvious damage to the pitch, the weather's impact off it also a concern. For clubs operating on tight margins, every cancelled fixture isn't just disappointing, it's destabilising.
I think on average we will make about £10,000 per game, something along those lines. So if we have 3 home games off in a month, that's £30,000, which is a lot of money that could basically put us behind. Over the past 2 years we've really tried budgeting for these sorts of things.
How big of a risk is weather patterns like this to football clubs like Taunton?
A massive risk, yeah. There'll be a lot of clubs within the area that are struggling from the impact of the weather that could put them at risk of going into administration or whatever. So and that's all sports. Yeah, there's obviously an impact for lots of clubs in the area.
When you come down to pitch level, you can see the impact the weather is having. And it's not just Taunton Town. I'm aware of a number of clubs right across our region that are feeling the impact. That's football, but it's a picture being mirrored across other sports in our region as well.
Less than 40 miles away at Wincanton Racecourse, officials are facing similar challenges.
It's been a very, very wet start to 2026. We actually had double the amount of rainfall in January this year than we had in January last year, and we thought January last year was quite wet. So it's challenging. We lost the 3rd of January fixture for frozen ground. We've been quite lucky that our fixtures have fell on days that we've not been waterlogged or had heavy rainfall in the days prior. A couple of fixtures we've had heavy rain the day after racing. It is very much a lottery.
If this is something that's going to be seen over the years to come, is it a real threat to the financial future of racecourses, not just here but also right across the region?
I think you're probably right, yeah. I think it is a little bit of a threat. Right now, if we manage to get through our remaining 5 fixtures of 2026, we've actually had quite a good year of only losing 1 fixture here through the last kind of 6 weeks. That we've been losing fixtures all over the country really. I think if you look back at previous seasons here, we always kind of lose 2 or 3, so actually losing 1, I think it's not a new threat. I think it's always been there. The threat of climate change and weather patterns always been there. It just feels now that we're getting drier summers and wetter winters.
It may be months before the consequences of this weather are clear, but for now, as the rain keeps falling, the impact of climate change is felt on pitches, tracks and the balance sheets right across our region.
Forecasters like me here at the Met Office have also been left frustrated by this blocked weather pattern. So why have we seen so much rain this year, and what can we learn from it? I've been speaking to Amy Doherty, who's head of the National Climate Information Centre. We have had an incredibly wet winter, and we know the start of this year has been really wet as well. We've had those records of 40, 50 days of continuous rainfall in some stations. What's the mechanism behind what's caused that perception and that reality of a lot of rainfall so far?
So the weather pattern that we're seeing at the moment is caused by the very, very cold weather that's been happening over the US. That's really strengthened the jet stream, and that's bringing in the systems and the storms coming round into the UK from the southeast. So we've got southeasterly flow coming up. And then in addition to that, we've got a blocking high of cold weather over the Scandinavia. And so that means these storms and rainfall are coming in and they can't go anywhere. They're stuck there, and we're just seeing more and more rain.
So it's almost like a double whammy, isn't it? You've got the sort of typical strength in the jet kind of firing these things towards us, but when they get to us, they've nowhere to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when it comes to climate change, how much can we draw relationships between that and what we're seeing over the winter period?
I mean, we've always projected that rainfall events are going to get more intense and more frequent with climate change. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. We've seen that trend in the last 80 years or so. We've seen wetter winters, and that's just going to continue with climate change.
You can sort of see it on graphs, can't you, the fact that the winter rainfall is increasing. When it rains heavier.
Yeah.
But also crazy extremes. We've come off the back of the hottest summer in 2025 into an incredibly wet winter, and it seems like the frequency of kind of going from one to the other or just seeing these extremes, the frequency is increasing. I mean, is that true to perception? What's your take on that?
Yes, that's also a climate change signal. We're going to see more extreme events. We're going to see a more intense drought, longer periods of drought, and equally more intense rain. And obviously as the climate warms more, that's going to intensify even more. And one of the key things to point out is that there's a lot of both spatial and temporal variability in the weather in the UK. So when we say these things are going to increase, it doesn't mean that we're not going to see cold periods from time to time in the summer, or rain in the summer, or dry periods like the west of Scotland at the moment, which is very unusually dry. So that variability can kick in at any time, but it's just that overall trend. When we look at the averages, that's the direction that we're going in.
From the hottest summer on record to an incredibly wet winter. I'm here at Burrator Reservoir in a part of Devon that saw their second wettest January on record. Here's how it looked last summer, the hottest on record. And here's how it looks today. And it's not just Burrator that has seen such a dramatic transformation. However, with a winter that's seen way more rain than average, there's some solace at least to suggest that maybe we won't be heading towards drought conditions this summer. However, climate change means that we're all going to have to get used to living with the impacts from more regular weather extremes.